So my previous video was about validations of my visions that I received early on, about 5 years ago, from an elder from Nome, Alaska, who's college educated, and also from younger women closer to my own age who were on the white mixed side of things from the North Dakota reservation. You know, young ladies who were humble enough to speak with me and show me videos while the pure white women were not present. And so now I'd like to talk about the truth about where my personal family comes from and how that relates to all of this. On my mom's mother's side, the family, her mother's family originally came from Edenton, North Carolina, which is near a place that used to be referred to as Bennett's Creek Reservation. And there were significant numbers of people from the Bennett's Creek Reservation who had refused to intermarry with Caucasians because of traumas. You had some who did intermarry with whites. You know, that's obvious. And then there were a lot of others who didn't, and they sold their land and they moved. You know, the Meherrin people and Waterboat people and, you know, other groups who were at the Bennett's Creek Reservation. You know, North Carolina did have reservations. It's just that people who want to label mulattoes as irrelevant to the futures of indigenous people, and people who want to label just straight black people as irrelevant to the future of indigenous people. You know, they're the ones who say that the North Carolina Indians are all fakes. But do the ancestors agree with that? No, they don't. And maybe that's part of the reason why I had the experiences that I had in North Dakota of learning about the thousands of years of history of black Australian people here in the Americas. So, anyway, with that said, you know, so there's the native ancestry on my mom's mother's side, and on her father's side, you know, their entire family's descended from a Seminole woman who they referred to as Mama Dora, you know, who came from Hialeah, Florida, and moved up north to Virginia. You know, and also there's indigenous ancestry on my father's side. And to look at my parents, they're both very dark-skinned people, much darker than myself, and you wouldn't think they're mixed with anything except just African. But, you know, they do have other ethnic groups in their background. And the issue with being an indigenous person is that people, they assume that you have to have light skin and a thin, narrow nose and silky hair to be considered indigenous or to be considered relevant to the future of indigenous people. And you have to understand that black people have always lived on this continent for thousands of years, and Asiatic people as well. You know, and their children, some chose to intermix with other groups and some didn't. So, like I said, and when you're dealing with living flesh and blood people, no matter which side of the phenotype spectrum they're on, there's always this offense to the idea of a colored woman being part of the future of indigenous people, because it's like a lot of people don't care about this wisdom of the elders that has been validated by science. And it's like You know, you either have to be just white mestizo and racist, or just black and Pan-African, and it's generally among the living, most of the time it's socially unacceptable to assert yourself as an indigenous person and to make an attempt to tell your people that black people have lived here for thousands of years and that a lot of the indigenous people are mixed. That's a huge offense, because on the one side you may have some mestizos who are trained to ignore their ancestors and to display the racism trained into them by colonizers and by people with whom they intermarried. And on the other side, you have black indigenous people, or even black immigrants, who automatically assume that you're trying to abandon them or look down on them just because you're asserting that you are indigenous to this continent and asserting your right to be supportive of your people and to assert your people's right to have a future instead of only just having a past. So the issue that lies on the table right now is, are we going to allow people to just fight to make this land the United States of Europe? Are we going to allow people to fight to make this land the United States of Africa? Or are we going to invest ourselves and to choose our partners with whom we have children in a way that affirms the American way of life that has existed for over 20,000 years, in which you do have black communities and Asiatic communities and interactions with people of other races without all this excessive race war kind of energy. That gets to a point where sometimes it goes a little too far. I know different tribes have animosities, but this is a modern age, and if we don't get past that, then our people don't have much of a future. Even for the modern black community, when you exclude immigrants, we're less than 12% of the population. And then it's like pulling teeth, just trying to educate our men. It's to the point where now you even have celebrities right now, this very day, literally today in the news, saying, hey, protect black women, believe black women when they tell you something's wrong. The struggle is that hard where you have to have celebrities to get on TV trying to encourage black men to actually believe a black woman when she's telling them that something is wrong or that someone hurt her. Is that bad to where celebrities have to come out and admit that, yeah, a lot of our men don't protect us? Just like in that movie I mentioned, in the part 1 video, where I talked about the videos I was shown in North Dakota about what the men did to further the agendas of colonizers, in the Australian ancestral homeland with black Aboriginal people. It's a mess, and we have to push past it. We have to correct it. But how can we correct this when our modern culture says that a grown man can never be disciplined? Our black ancestors, whether they're who are native to this land, and also some of the ancestors from Africa, there's this culture where a grown man can be disciplined or even beaten by other men if he's way out of line. Back then, grown men could be subjected to discipline from the hands of other men just like children. And we don't have that culture today. In today's culture, our men are taught that they're all supposed to be kings and that no one can ever tell them what to do. And it's an extreme opposite to the way men had to live in the old days. You know, in the old days, your man, if you were a man who was way out of line, your male elders could beat you while you're a grown man. And the most, you know, in some tribes, the most powerful man in the tribe, he ate his food last as a display of wisdom and responsibility and humility. And our culture today looks nothing like that. And we're failing to get these problems under control because we have a very Europeanized culture in which grown men are never subjected to discipline at the hands of specially selected male elders. You know, you can't, we've tried love and compassion and compromise to change these most basic problems that we're failing to overcome in dealing with our own men. And the truth is some problems you can't overcome with love. Some problems you can only overcome with discipline. And our men, they don't have discipline, strict discipline throughout their adulthood like our male ancestors did. Instead, they're running wild saying, nobody can tell me what to do, I'm a king. You know, our men today, they're not like that chief who's going to eat last as a display of responsibility and wisdom. And that is where we've gone wrong.